Everyone who read. Our speaker tonight is been a friend of mine for a very long time, and he's done a lot of work on himself, and he's done a lot of work on not figuring out this program, but investigating all the tenets of this program and implementing them into his own life. And so what I found is every time he talks, he brings something different to the podium. So with that, I'll give you Mike.
All right, Mike.
How y'all doing tonight? Good to be here. Got this Christmas tree here. I was thinking about, before I came up here, about what a gift this place is. It being the Christmas season, and I was thinking about sharing a little something about this place that, some of y'all might not know. There's a lot of history to this particular place that we're standing in. A long time ago, you've got the 5 Points South down there, which if you look at the 5 streets when they come together, there's a big circle. That used to be a turnstile thing with some little railroad tracks on it. And some horses would pull a carriage, and it was sort of like the first trolley car, except the horses pulled it. When it would come to the circle, it would turn a little bit, and the horses would go, because turning them around in the middle of where all those people walking used to trip them out. So they had it where it would turn, they could stand still. This particular room, was where they kept those horses. This was the horse stable for the trolley car horses. That's why the floor is not even, because they would hose it out to wash out the thing. This building has been here for a long time. There used to be a big house right there in the middle of that parking lot down there, and that was what was there when I got here. And the Masons actually owned the building. The Masons are the ones that is the group that Benjamin Franklin was a member of, and some of the symbols from the Masonics order are on our money. The triangle with the eye. Those a very old, well-established group of men. Benjamin Franklin and some of the founding fathers. So they were gracious enough to rent us that space. And then in 2003, the building itself burned down. There's several rumors about what happened, but it was quite a loss for us, those of us that were around, because the building that we never went into, which was this one, became all we had. Just like children are resilient, alcoholics are resilient, and we have made do. But I do miss the non-smoking meeting in the back and all the memories that went along with. A long time ago, we'd have smoking meetings. All the meetings would be smoking, and I remember down there, if you'd come on a Saturday, you could make seven meetings on a Saturday, which you still can. I used to do it all the time. I still make 14 meetings a week, but you can make 7 on a Saturday, and by the time you were there, you came to the 3, the 6, and then the 8, and of course there's the 10:30 hoot owl. You've hung out there all night, and all these people are smoking. Before we had smoke eaters, the door was probably down to here, and the smoke had filled the room, and it was coming out of the top of the door. And I remember you'd walk in, and you'd almost be touching the smoke, and I remember how much I loved it, because coffee and cigarettes was all I had left. And now they've taken that away. You can't even smoke. You can't even vape, which I'm not sure how dangerous that is. It sounds fairly tame. I don't know. But it seems like to me AA meetings and smoking and drinking coffee go together. And if you're new, and like I was, you'll find that it's the only legal drugs we have left. So be careful about quitting too soon. I remember that I quit too soon. I think I quit when I had 5 years to smoking, and I remember I was a raw nerve, and I had to start back. I realized that it served a purpose. I learned early on. I remember this guy. He came in. He still comes around. Well, he got barred from here, but he had a half of a hand. Anna knows who I'm talking about. But he came in. I remember in the early '90s, and he said, "I'm quitting liquor and dope and sugar and yeast and caffeine and nicotine." I remember him sitting in the meeting saying all that shit. I was like, "What an order! I can't go through with it." But the thing about it is he was shooting dope in his neck in a week. I do remember that. So our bodies will revolt, I believe, if we try to take too much away at once. The alcohol and the drugs is a huge step, and I would probably leave it at that. So if you dip or smoke, go for it, baby. That's all I can tell you. But there's one good thing if you do quit smoking or whatever it is. What I have found is that if you take that first cigarette, it'll keep you from taking that first drink there for a minute. So it does bridge the gap. So if you do try to quit, you can quit smoking again, but if you go drink, you're not guaranteed an opportunity to come back. And if you're thinking about suicide, which I have seen before, please take a drink first. Because we could sober you up, but we can't bring you back to life. Although there was a man that we just got celebrating his birthday that rose Lazarus from the dead. And we have in our book where it talks about many of us take up our beds and walk again. These references are replete in the big book. But it takes effort, doesn't it? I wish I could just sit and just pray hard enough and God would do it all. Which leads me into what I kind of wanted to talk about, seeing as I'm standing in front of the tree and what this time of year is. In Bill's story on page 11, he talks about, "To Christ I conceded a great man, his teachings most excellent. For me I took the things that seemed to be most convenient, the rest I disregarded." That was the focus of where I wanted to go with it. And this was before he got sober, and I remember myself doing that. I wanted to take the easy stuff, and anything that had to do with any effort or work, the rest I disregarded. And of course I got the same results, right? Surely there was probably a little fear about it, that I didn't have what it took to do it. And I know that I'm probably not alone in that. I believe my observation is true, that I've observed that many people come in, and rightfully so, with the track record of failures that we've amassed by the time we get here, some people more some than others. I come by it honestly that I don't know if I have what it takes to make it here. And it reminds me of a couple of things. One joke in particular. And this is the perfect crowd for this. I understand that there's probably a lot of people in, I don't even know if you would call it a halfway house, but let's just say there's some newcomers here. But there's this joke Richard Pryor told a long time ago. It's a comedian like Chris Rock, except a little while longer ago. Real funny guy anyway. He's up on the stage. He would do his skit by himself up there like Eddie Murphy used to, standing up there, nothing but a microphone and maybe a stool. And he was playing a skit about a guy that was trying to get a job. And he was playing the guy that's trying to get the job, and he was playing the guy that was the boss, playing both parts as he would have had to, being up there by himself. And he's playing the guy that is the boss, and he's playing like he's looking at the resume. And he said, "Mr. Pryor, I just don't know if you're responsible. I don't know if you're what we're looking for. I don't know if you're dependable." And then he plays the other side, and he scratches his head, and in his best drunken voice and demeanor, he says, "What do you mean I'm not dependable? For the last 5 years, I've had a $500 a day drug habit. I ain't missed a payment." Well, now that is exactly true and exactly apropos to what we're talking about, isn't it? What we're talking about is this guy had an amount of energy within him that he was able to not miss that payment. Lord knows, and some of us do too in here, what he had to do to not miss that payment. Maybe he had to scam a dope deal. Maybe he had to steal some. I'm not going to go too deep in what he had to do, but let's just say he probably hadn't won the lottery. And it's hard to say I don't regret the past. There are things that, like our book talks about, I shudder to think I may have been observed, and I believe that I'm not alone in thinking that. But let's be clear, there was a certain amount of energy that it took, and tenacity or stick-to-itiveness that it took to not miss that payment. His resolve was being tested, right? He resolved to not miss a payment, and by God, he didn't. And why am I telling you this story? Why am I belaboring this story? The story is perfectly placed because what I had just said before was about how I felt when I got here and how I'm certain that there's newcomers that feel the same way. I don't know if I have what it takes. Well, that joke proves that we have what it takes, doesn't it? The energy was there, the desire was there, the resolve was there, but I was putting it in the wrong direction. And what I have found is that this way of life has taught me not only do I have what it takes, that if I put it in this direction, the amount of effort that it took to not miss that payment, so to speak, this is much easier than all the effort that it took to not miss that payment. That's what I'm talking about. And in our book, it talks about, in Dr. Bob's story, in the book, Dr. Bob's Nightmare, he talks about if you put half the zeal into this that I put out there, my Heavenly Father won't let me down. Now, zeal is an old term, but we know what it means. It's that energy. It's that effort. It's that tenacity, resolve. You know, there's an old saying that has gone around for a long time, that God doesn't put more on us than we could handle. Now, that's an interesting statement, and I know that the people who say it are very well-meaning, and when they say it in meetings about whatever situation in life and recovery, it probably fits. But let's take a look at a broader use of that term and see if it holds. What I have found is that this disease was more than I could handle. God put this test in front of me, not just because there's no testimony without a test, but I think that he put it in front of me to see if I would turn to him. So in fact, he did put more on me than I could handle, which demands I go one of two ways, the bitter end or accept spiritual help. So in a very real way, I'm getting the basket spun on me. That usually really gets me hot. Because it's a distraction, isn't it? But it's okay. Where was I? Right? Now the whole thing's wrecked for about 5 minutes, but that's okay. What we were talking about is the energy that it took to make what I needed to happen, and God put more on me than I could handle, so I would turn to him. And what we're talking about is a simple reliance on a higher power that I had to come up with my conception. And I'll get to that in a minute, but what I would like to do is share a little bit about, since we have so many people that were new like I was when I got here, there was a question that I always asked, why do I keep going back? I mean, you know, we got all these reasons not to. I mean, she's going to leave me, or they're going to lock me up, or I have these things, I'm going to lose my license, or whatever it is. So the real question is, why do I keep going back after I've sworn off for good? You know, because I know for me, I sang the Addicts National Anthem, I'll never do it again. And I meant it when I sang it. And I'm absolutely certain, even though we may not like to go sing karaoke, every single solitary person within the sound of my voice has sang that song, or you wouldn't even be here. Because we tried to quit, and we've been unsuccessful. Because nobody slides off a rainbow and lands in sober living America. Life's going great. Let me go hang out and try to catch a ride from Pops or whoever the guy that drives the thing with the hurt leg or whatever. I've just heard the rumors. I don't know. And thank God he's around, right? I mean, it'd be tough to hoof it. So it's a great opportunity, and there's these resources that are available. But just like the guy that didn't miss a payment, this way of life takes effort, doesn't it? You know, and there's certain things that are probably expected of me to try to go out and hustle up enough money, honestly, and pay my rent. And these are the set of complications sort of that come along with this way of life. The old way of life had a set of complications, didn't it? Was I going to get killed today? Who did I lie to? What place can't I go anymore? Because people weren't saying keep coming back. They were saying don't keep coming back. And to keep all these things straight reminds me of a movie called The Stigmata, where the guy that was a priest was talking to the girl, Miss Arquette, and she said, well, what was it like to not get to be with women? And he goes, well, I wasn't always a priest. And then he paused and he said, well, I guess it's just a new set of complications. And that is very true. This is a new set of complications, one that's fraught with integrity, right? Expecting me to do what I say I'm going to do. Responsibility. It's a different kind of not miss a payment, and try to rebuild what life that I had. Hopefully, this new set of complications entails making some of those some days to days. What's that? I think that if you're like me, that you have had in the past things that you wanted to accomplish in life. Maybe it was a hobby that you used to enjoy that we find that drugs took away from us. Maybe it was a guitar and then I hocked it and then I was a rock star without a guitar, right? But this way of life promises me that I can get that guitar back, so to speak, right? Some days, 2 days is something that you wanted to do. I mean, for me, there was a someday that I wanted to take Fred Astaire dance lessons, right? I mean, that sounds kind of hokey, but I'd see them people on TV doing that stuff, and I thought, well, that looks pretty neat. And I kept passing the Fred Astaire dance studio in Vestavia for years. Someday. Well, here's the thing. Someday never comes unless it's today. So one day I passed and I turned around and I went in there and I put my little money down and I took 6 months worth of lessons. And I've used them a couple of times, at family functions, and they're like, holy shit, But aside from that, meaningless, right? But is it meaningless if it was one of my some days and I made it to today? It's not meaningless. It's worth its weight in gold. If I attribute that someday, today to recovery, that makes recovery worth more, doesn't it? Because I attribute these things that I begin to accomplish to recovery, and then I begin to realize the truth of it all is that recovery has taken nothing away from me. It's given me the opportunity for everything. I came in recovery, obviously a little younger than I am now, failing out of school, getting kicked out of the house, probably being, my father said I was fixing to be, had to go into the military because I didn't have anywhere to go. And since then, as the years have gone on, there's been things that have gone on, and let's just say that I've made some strides in the right direction. And staring in the face of fear of that's for those other people that are smarter than us. Staring in the face of that mantra that I came in hearing that I'm an alcoholic and an addict and I'm broken and I'm supposed to want to drink and I can't think and everything I touch turns to shit. That's a mantra that we get caught up in this loop. And it's no wonder that we don't think we can do anything, because you can go into any meeting and most people are talking about their fucked up shit, their failures, their drinking and drugging, what it's like to be in the ditch. They're describing the walls of it. You can almost feel it. It's HD. It's hard to break out of that cycle and give ourselves something to live up to rather than something to live down to. Bill W., the guy that wrote the book, actually said that when he could control the meetings and control what was shared, because he was the boss. And it seemed like more people made it when he was the boss than they do now. He said, there were very little talk of war stories in meetings in those days. That was between you and your sponsor, and frankly, it was nobody's business. We made everybody share about recovery, and in doing so, we gave ourselves something to live up to. Now, that's the guy that wrote the book. That sounds cool, don't it? That's why I said it, because it sounds cool. Because it's true, and it sounds cool. I need to make that my mantra. Because these lies that I've been telling myself are not true. You know, like I said, I came in failing out, a failure, plenty of opportunities to look at situations where started something and didn't finish it. 8 irons in the fire, none of them hot, all these statements. And from then to now, I've become a lawyer and I've become a CPA and have 30 letters after my name, and that don't mean anything to any of y'all, but every single one of those letters came from recovery, right? Meaning, when I attribute those some days, 2 days, to my recovery, I'm less liable to just throw it away, because anything that was given to me with no effort, I didn't care about. Psh. But let me put some blood, sweat, and tears and some effort into something. And I'm not saying that's going to do it all, but I'm just less liable to chuck it. That's only logical. That only makes good sense. Let's get back to the question that I asked a while ago. Why do I keep going back? Now, I'm going to read something in a special way. And I didn't realize this till later in recovery, and I'm hoping that I can tell you, maybe some of you newer people, this a little sooner, so you really see what I saw, that alcohol really did something more than just a slightly tipsy, out of control feeling. Alcohol and drugs did something more than we like the effect produced by alcohol and drugs. That's why I go back. It's a lot more than that. I'm going to read it just like this. It talks about, and this is the promises. When I took a drink of alcohol, I didn't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. When I got high, I comprehended the word serenity and I knew peace. When I got loaded, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience could benefit others. When I got high, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity disappeared. When I got loaded, my whole attitude and outlook upon life changed. When I got high, fear of people and of economic insecurity left me. When I got loaded, I intuitively knew how to handle situations that used to baffle me. I suddenly realized that drugs and alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. Now, that is exactly why I kept going back. Even after drugs and alcohol stopped doing all of these, my mind was hardwired like a computer to remember that at one time it did do those things. It remembered. See? It remembered that it made me less fearful. It remembered it gave me that attitude and outlook change. It made me remember that for a moment I didn't have to be as afraid. And regardless of the threats that I have when I get here, if I don't replace the promises of drugs and alcohol with the promises of these steps, I am going to go back. It don't matter who threatens me or what they threaten me with. I mean, I might be a fine, upstanding guy, but let me get started. I'll be dealing dope in Jafi. Oh, I've seen it. Disrespectful in the extreme. We can be extremely disrespectful to the very thing that has saved our life. I don't want to be that guy. I've seen people in meetings steal money from the meetings. Very disrespectful. I've seen people come into the meetings high. Very disrespectful. At some point, I have to start acting respectful if I want to be respectable. It takes effort. It's not easy sometimes. The path of principle that leads to character is not the easy path. I found that there was a difference between having character and being a fucking character. Today, I'd like to think I have a little character. And today, I'd like to think that I'm a little less of a character. But what I have found is that sometimes you have to stand for something, right? Because a guy a long time ago Could have been Malcolm X. It was probably a guy in 1947 that said it on the Senate floor, which it was. He said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that is very true. Sometimes standing up for recovery and what is right is tough in the midst of peer pressure. You're going to find peer pressure early on in recovery. There's another fellowship that says something that's very true. My thoughts need to be on my new associations, and that is damn right. Because I can get around the wrong people in recovery, and what happened? Well, what happened is I wasn't watching what I was doing, and I wasn't respecting alcohol and drugs like I should. And it's not very popular to say that just because somebody's sitting in a meeting doesn't necessarily mean that they're working a spiritual program, but those are the facts. I have to be honest that just because I sit in a room, it doesn't mean that I'm a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sitting in the middle of a room like this doesn't make me a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous no more than sitting in the middle of a garage is going to turn me into a Toyota. Just because I go to a PTA meeting don't make me a parent. Certain steps have to transpire. And what I have found is that trying to stick with the winners is a judgment that is imposed upon us at an early age in here, but it's not really a judgment. There's a difference between a judgment and an assessment. And I learned this from also the guy that wrote the book. He talks about in 144, and as Bill sees it, it's called blind trust. You can go look it up. As Bill sees it, 144. It's kind of titled Blind Trust. I remember 144 because it's 12 times 12, by the way. There's all kinds of coinky-dinks here. I find that extremely interesting. It says blind trust. It says, are we supposed to blindly trust everybody that we come across? It said this would be folly. It says we have a duty to our program to make assessments of those in who we would place our trust. We have to make those assessments. And what is the difference between a judgment and assessment? A judgment is projecting onto somebody traits that I couldn't possibly know because of whatever. We know what I'm talking about. An assessment is based on observed behavior, a lot different than a judgment, correct? Because I am looking, I see, I'm making an assessment based on what I see. That is not a judgment. So when I say I need to stick with the winners, that means I need to watch people's feet, not necessarily listen to just what they say. Because as we know, we can be cunning, baffling, and powerful. I know this is a stretch, but there's con men in the room that will lie very good and convincingly. What I have found is that lies tend to change. Being a lawyer, they ask us to ask the same question in different ways. But what's interesting is the truth always stays the same. Being properly armed with the facts and the truth is the only path that's going to lead to longevity. You know, when I think about the disease that I have, it wants me to remember, like I said, what alcohol and drugs did for me, not what it did to me. What I have found is once I realize that I'm dealing with something more than I could handle, and I realize that I've sang the Addicts National Anthem and Alcoholics National Anthem, I'll never do it again, and meant it and drank again after that. And I have this physical part of me called a craving that they talked about. They talk about it as a phenomenon of craving. The word phenomenon means an unexplainable event. Phenomenon of craving meaning once I get started, I can't predict with any certainty what's going to happen. I'll give you an example. I may intend on getting off work and going down to Burley Earl's, which is a place that used to be around, and have a couple of beers, and then I'm going to go home and cut the grass. Well, I have a couple of beers and something inside me says, forget the damn grass. I thought I told you we was going to have another. Right? And the next thing I know, I'm sporting some Nike kicks and I'm coming home barefooted because I've hawked my Nike kicks for a bag of crumbs. Do you feel me? That's right. So it's no wonder that I shudder to think I may have been observed. Some of the things that I have done in the midst of the phenomenon of craving. But that's not the crux of my problem, is it? Even our book talks about it. these observations of these insane things that I do while drinking, we're talking about 21 and 22, are academically, they're academic and pointless if I never took the first one. It talks about, about 10 or so pages later, 35, it talks about the crux of my problem is the mental state preceding the first drink. That's the crux of my problem. That's the mental state that puts me in a frame of mind that I tell myself, hey, you remember, we need to get them promises, buddy. And we know where we're going to get them, regardless of what the threat is. I'm not thinking straight. The mental state is flawed. I'm believing a lie. The lie is that I can drink or use without harm. That's the insanity of this disease, nothing more and nothing less. There's doctors that have come up since I've been here that made up all kinds of alphabet soup. ADHD, alphabet soups you wouldn't believe. I don't even talk about them all. And they've got some dope that goes along with each one of them, and everybody's making money off of it. But I'm here to tell you, these steps have helped me pay the fuck attention. These steps have calmed my nervousness. These steps have helped me to accomplish things that I didn't even know that I could even contemplate doing. What I have found is that those of us, like it says on 133, those of us who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health. It says that on 133, but you say that in your run-of-the-mill meeting and they'll probably run you out of there on rails. Because you're not supposed to say things like that. We're supposed to fall in lockstep with the mantra people that talk about how fucked up we are. And our mind is this terrible place to go, and we're supposed to want to drink and can't think. That's the mantra. But our book talks about a little something different. That's why it's important to stay in the book. Because the book has all kinds of promises. When it talks about those of us who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, I'm not saying I'm smart as Einstein, but the perspective is clear. I can see things clearly, and I'm not tainted by the disease telling me that lie. The sanity that I enjoy today is that I don't believe the lie that I could drink or use without harm. God has restored my sanity. There's, like I said, a million other definitions for insanity, but the one we deal with here is that one. These steps help to keep me from going insane and believing the lie that I can use without harm, to get those promises that they really didn't happen that much at the end anyway. It helps to keep me straight about what alcohol did to me, and less tells me what alcohol did for me. It's flipped the script. I don't think about what alcohol and drugs did for me anymore. I think in a moment of temptation, maybe in the summertime, and I see that billboard and whatever, I in an instant know a great revulsion rises up in me, and that's the dumbest fucking idea I've ever heard in my life. It ain't going to solve anything. I'm going to wake up with that and whatever problems that I thought I had. Let's talk about using dreams. I mean, I'm going all over the place, but what you will notice is if you've been to enough speaker meetings, now that I mention it, you'll know what I'm talking about. When you go to speaker meetings, what do you get? You get 55 minutes of somebody talking about the ditch, using dope, bragging about war stories. No, I smoked up 2 houses. I tipped that BMW, smoked it to the bumper. I mean, some of the stuff that I hear makes me want to beat the shit out of something. I mean, I've been in meetings where people will one-up each other all the way. Somebody ends up smoking up 5 houses and 10 families. They don't even realize what they're saying. They just got to be worse than the dude before them and said, you get the piece of shit award. Let's talk about getting out of the ditch, brother. That's what you get when you go to most speaker meetings. They go, oh shit, it's 5 till, I'm in recovery, we'll holler. Because it gets away with them. They don't even realize they've spent an hour talking about something that has 0 value whatsoever. Why am I mentioning this? Because you'll notice I ain't talked about nairing a 1. Because that's not how I operate. I think every single one of us knows how to get high. You don't need me to try to tell you how to get high. 1, because it has no value. 2, you become, I've done worse than you. Telling war stories is divisive. If I tell you I did a substance and you didn't do it, you've shut me down in an instant because I don't know what you're going through. If I ain't done as much or where you did it, I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm just a lightweight. Can you see how the mental thing is in an instant? It's over. Communication has not taken place the moment that I go down that road. But you will find that I have communicated perfectly here because I've only talked about things that every single person in here could go, uh-huh. And that is because I watch y'all's heads and I know if I'm in the right direction. Let's talk about, we're talking about the solution. There is a solution. Let's talk about the God of my childhood that I no longer, let's talk about a little bit about that. I talked about the first step, and I got to talk a little bit about the second. See how time can get away from us? Look, it's 15 till, and I feel like I just got started. I could talk just like this for 3 fucking hours. There is absolutely no doubt about it. With the same intensity, because I'm just getting started. They're fixing to make me stop, and I just got started. And I believe that people are hungry for some fire and some solution. I've heard enough of that other stuff. You know, when I was coming up, my parents used to make me go to the church and made me sit still. Oh, I hated it. I was such a mischievous kid, and they made me sit still, and these old people were over there bringing in the sheaves, and then they did the deep voices of the old man, bringing in the sheaves, in the sheaves. I mean, it was like some a cappella shit from hell. I mean, it was, and they made me sit still and, break out your hymnals, and I'm like, oh my God, and all I heard was homeboy talking about to think it was to do it, and you're going to burn. To think it was to do it. I mean, I had done some of it to think it was to do it. And I said, okay, I'll just do it till I need glasses. Now, who gets that? Who gets that in an instant? I ain't even going to go down what it is, but you get what I'm talking about. A couple of you know what I'm talking about. And that comes from Sam, an old timer here. He goes, okay, I'll just do it till I need glasses. But anyway, if you ask somebody that seems to know after the meeting, and they'll tell you what I mean, because we're in mixed company. I ain't fixing to go down that road. So here's the deal. Ebby came to see Bill in his house, if you recall, on page 9 in the book. And he talked about there was something inexplicably different about his eyes. And there's something that's not in the book that's going to shed some light, and you'll never see this page in the book the same again. And this is the reason that I'm talking about this story. All right, so if you recall, Ebby says, I've got religion. All right, that's in the book. All right, let me tell you what's not in the book, because you got to read AA Comes of Age to see what's between the lines. And then I'm going to tell you about something that's a few pages later, and you'll be going, wonder why he said that, and it ties it together. Ebby said, I've got religion. Bill said, what brand of religion is it? And he said, Ebby, it's the religion of common sense. Now, what is the religion of common sense? I've got a God that's going to forgive me for what I've done, but expects me to live differently. Boy, well, that takes me out of the loop of that other stuff to think it was to do it, and I was already damned, right? I could have my own conception of God that's going to forgive me for what I've done, but what about my part? Expects me to live differently, right? I just want Big G to do it all, right? I just want him to do it all. I don't want to have no footwork. It's like I want to be starving and lock myself in the closet and expect God to shove an Oscar Mayer through the keyhole. We know that ain't going to happen. There's a certain amount of footwork that I have to do, right? Right? So if I'm willing to have faith without works is dead, if I'm willing to meet God halfway, he always does more than the half. God's going to do for me what I can't do for myself, but he's not going to do for me what I can.
That's right.
See? So, now, why did I tell the story? He said, Bill, it's the religion of common sense. Now, if you recall, a few pages later on page 13, he said, my common sense had thus become uncommon. That's why he said it, because of what's not in the book when Ebby said it's the religion of common sense. And there Bill was going, well, my boy's sober, so my common sense must be uncommon. All of a sudden, it washed over him, just like it washed over me. There's something at work in this cat's life, right? And he tells me of a simple idea, forget that business of the past and bringing in the sheaves or whatever it is. If I'm willing to do my part, faith without works is dead. I got a God that'll forgive me for what I've done, but expects me to live differently. Because I don't know about y'all, I don't think God's going to bless no bullshit. I'm going to come up in here and keep robbing and stealing. That ain't how it works, bro. We're talking about karma. It's more than a bitch. At some point, I got to start flipping the script on my fucking life. And it ain't easy sometimes, doing the right thing. It ain't easy when all your friends are out there and you got to stay home because you're in law school and you got 3 years, 5 nights a week, and I never missed a meeting. Graduated magna. Now, that's not stuff that we're supposed to be able to do. We're broken people, right? Those people are smarter than us, right? We can't do stuff like that. I'm here to report that that's a lie. Because if we were able to not miss a payment, so to speak, and some of them people said, he looked like he got it going on. I didn't know he had a problem. With that monkey on my back, even I made some people think I was maintaining. Think about taking that weight off. The sky's the limit. That's what I'm trying to say. Even our book talks about on 21, he talks about how we have special skills and abilities, fast thinking and imaginative. One of the finest fellows in the world, has a bright outlook for his family and friends. The word genius is used. He talks about how 2 of us can do the work of 5. I tend to believe in this. See, because it's part of giving myself something to live up to. And also, it's part of me interjecting some experience, strength, and hope in here, not war stories, weakness, and despair. You know, because the way I look at it is I never liked my dope cut. I don't want my fucking recovery cut, okay? I want the straight dope from somebody that's willing to tell me the truth, even though some people ain't going to like them for it. Our society and our planet has tended to be very hard on people that stand alone and know what they're talking about. What about Galileo? He said the earth revolved around the sun. All the best minds in the world said, no, bro, you crazy as hell. They locked him up. He died in house arrest for stuff they teach kids in kindergarten. What about Columbus? He said the world is round. Rest of them said, no, it's flat. The water just runs off the edge, bro. Don't you need to get with the program? Have another bottle of liquor. Well, who was right? Well, the thing about it is, sometimes standing up for what you believe in, when you're standing in the middle of... No, I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, look, you know where you're coming from. You know who you're around. Somebody that's going to be talking about the stuff I'm talking about is not going to be fucking popular. But what I have found is that I'm thankful for people like Bill W. and Galileo and Columbus that were willing to stand up for what they believed in. And eventually people realized that they were telling the truth. But what it takes is me honestly asking myself what these things mean to me. Even our book talks about, please don't let any prejudice you may have towards spiritual terms from asking you what they honestly mean to you. And what I have found is that in my life, I was dealing with faith and worship and little else. I'll prove it to you. How many of you had the power go out and you go around the house flipping switches? I had faith that electricity was there. I'm steady flipping. It's been off for a day. Every time I go in a room, I've had faith in other things in my life. I certainly had faith in drugs that it was going to give me them promises, even though it wasn't given to me toward the end. I worshiped. I worshiped money. I've worshiped a chick. I've worshiped other things, material things. These concepts of faith and worship were the backbone of my life, and I wasn't even willing to look at it. And all of a sudden I get in here and they ask me to think about these terms. And I said, hold on a minute. I'm bringing up pictures of bringing in the sheaves and all them hypocrites from church. Let me break it down for you. I've seen more hypocrites in recovery than I ever saw in church. I go to 14 meetings a week. I've seen people as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. Saying one thing in a meeting and doing another. What I have found is that I want to bring with my feet what I sing in here. And it takes effort. It's easy to come in here and sing like a mockingbird, lay it down like sweet molasses. I'm a pro at that. If you hadn't already figured out, I know exactly how to do that. The real trick is taking them other 23 hours of a day and trying to apply these principles in my life. What about doing what I say I'm going to do? Huh? It's the little things. It's easy to say, yeah, I'll bring you that phone. It can roll off your tongue just like that. How many times? Yeah, I'll be there. I've said it. Didn't mean a word I was saying, because I just was saying what I knew they wanted to hear. But actually backing it up and doing it sometimes takes effort, because the next thing you know, you have to turn around because you're halfway here and you said, I told him I would bring that. It takes effort to be somebody of integrity. Rome was not built in a day. I know that it's slow going, but I have to begin somewhere. And what I have found is that and all we got to talk about was 1, 2, and 3 because we only had an hour. I mean, I could talk about all 12, but they would lock you out because you wouldn't be home before 10 or 11. And they're not going to let me talk that long. But let's talk about 3 and we'll wrap it up and how it ties everything together. We'll talk about 3 in the word that's missing from 3. There's a word that's missing, and it ties into what I've been talking about. When Bill W. wrote the step 3, he said, turn my will and my life over to the care and direction of God. Now, they had a big battle with 2 atheists that didn't want God in the book, and they said, okay, fellas, if we'll put as you understood him, will y'all shut the fuck up and let me finish writing this book? And they said, okay, if you put as we understood him in step 3, we'll leave you alone. That's why we got as we understood him. What about the word direction? Care and direction. We know that it says care. A non-alcoholic psychiatrist came in and they were wanting to sell more books to make more money. He said, you've got to take that word direction out of there. Nobody likes to be told to follow directions. We need to change it to suggestions. Well, the rest is history. Because what happens when he took that word direction out of there? And where did he get care and direction? He gets it from the prayer, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. That's where it comes from. Protection and direction. And why am I talking about this? Because direction is missing. It implies that God's going to do it all. Care of God, it takes out my part entirely. It takes out the whole thrust of what the step was meant to be. It was saying, God's going to do his part. You must do yours. But when they took that word out, it's no wonder that most of us hear, oh yeah, Big G's going to do it all. I'm sitting in the closet. Where's my weenie? It ain't happening. And what I have to have is somebody that's willing to tell me the truth that I do play a part in this. Oh, I'm just getting warmed up. But time is up. I wish it wasn't. Honestly, I have spoken till 9:30 and not a single person moved. But I'm not going to do that. Anna would never let me do that. But I will say this. I didn't stop drinking at 9. Oh, it's 9. Let's leave the crack house. Y'all lock it up behind you, brother. Yeah, you know that. Just go and do the rest of them pebbles over there. I'm out of here. It's 9. God damn. The thing about it is,
There are other places that have hours.
it's all good. No, on Fridays at the Hut, we used to have an hour and a half meeting. On Fridays at CA, we had the candlelight meeting, and it was an hour and a half for about 8 or 9 years. Because sometimes it's just getting good, and you know some people are getting honest, and somebody says our time is up. Have you ever been in there and you go, man, I could hang. And maybe it's not just because you're hearing all this cool shit. Here's what it really is. We crave a safe place. We crave a safe place. And there's a word that on page 31, it talks about it. It says we voluntarily committed ourselves to asylums. Asylum is not a bad word. Do you know what asylum means when you look it up in Webster's dictionary? A safe place. Go look it up. So, yes, I voluntarily committed myself to this asylum, even though it's half the building that it used to be. What I know that they kept horses here, and I know that I got just as much of an opportunity to be a thoroughbred as the next guy. Wow. And we're sitting right in the middle of it. I can't keep postponing it. But I will say this. because I always say it at the end of every time I talk and share, and it's important because in the 12th step it says, having had this, I need to say this. So somebody else can hear me say it, so I can hear me say it, so they can hear that the steps work. So I will just say this. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and I'll pass.